Sarah Chen had walked the same route to work for 3 years, her footsteps marking time through rain and shine, through seasons that blurred into one another like watercolors on wet paper. The coffee shop on Maple Street opened at 6:30, and she was always their second customer, right after the construction worker who grabbed black coffee and left without a word. But there was someone else who marked her mornings, someone who had become as familiar as her own reflection in the shop window. He sat on the corner of 5th and Maple, always in the same spot, as if the concrete itself had molded to his shape. A green military jacket, faded and worn, hung from his shoulders like a flag that had seen too many battles. His sign was simple, written in careful block letters on cardboard. Homeless veteran. Any help appreciated. God bless. What struck Sarah most was not the sign or the jacket, but his eyes. They were clear and focused, not clouded by substances or defeat like so many others she passed. He looked at each person who walked by, really looked at them, as if he could see something beneath their mourning masks. The first time Sarah gave him money, he had thanked her with such genuine warmth that it startled her. His voice was steady, educated even, and he looked her directly in the eye. Most people avoided eye contact with the homeless, treating them like furniture or ghosts, but this man demanded to be seen. After that first encounter, Sarah found herself planning for their brief exchanges. She would prepare a few dollars, sometimes $5 when her freelance checks came through, and she would stop, just for a moment, to acknowledge him. His name was Marcus. She learned on a Tuesday morning when the spring rain had soaked through his jacket. She had brought him a coffee along with her usual contribution, and he had introduced himself properly, standing to shake her hand as if they were meeting at a business conference rather than a street corner. Marcus told her he had served in Afghanistan, 2 tours, before life had taken turns he never saw coming. He did not elaborate, and Sarah did not press. Some wounds ran too deep for sidewalk conversations. Over the months, their exchanges grew longer, though never more than a few minutes. Sarah learned that Marcus had a daughter somewhere in Oregon, that he loved mystery novels, that he could recite poetry from memory. He learned that Sarah was a graphic designer, that she was trying to save money to visit her aging parents in Taiwan, that she felt stuck in a life that looked successful from the outside but felt hollow within. These morning conversations became the most honest moments of her day, more real than the meetings she sat through or the dates she endured with men who talked but never listened. Marcus never asked for anything beyond what people freely gave. He never followed anyone, never raised his voice, never showed anger or bitterness. He simply existed in that space, bearing witness to the river of humanity that flowed past him each day. Sarah began to notice things about him that others missed. The way he kept his belongings organized in a neat backpack. The way he shared his food with a stray cat that visited him. The way he always said good morning to the shop owners, even those who scowled and wished he would disappear from a pristine street corner. Winter came early that year, and Sarah bought Marcus a thermal blanket and thick gloves. He had accepted them with tears in his eyes, and for the first time, she saw the crack in his armor. He was not just surviving on that corner. He was holding on by his fingernails, and the cold might be the thing that finally broke his grip. Sarah went home that night and looked up shelters, resources, programs for veterans. The system seemed designed to exhaust rather than help, a maze of requirements and wait lists and closed doors. She printed out information anyway, determined to bring it to Marcus in the morning. But the next morning, Marcus was not there. The corner looked wrong without him, like a sentence missing its subject. Sarah stood where Marcus always sat, her coffee growing cold in her hand, the printed shelter information crumpling in her grip. A piece of his cardboard sign lay torn and discarded near the curb, trampled by careless feet. The stray cat circled the spot, meowing with what Sarah could only interpret as confusion. She asked the barista inside the coffee shop if he had seen Marcus. The young man shrugged, barely looking up from the espresso machine. People came and went, he said. Street people especially. Sarah felt a flash of anger at the casual dismissal, at the way Marcus had been reduced to just another faceless street person in this kid's mind. She walked to the convenience store next door, where the owner was arranging newspapers in the stand outside. Mr. Patel knew Marcus. They had talked about cricket sometimes, he told Sarah, his expression clouding. Mr. Patel had seen police cars on the corner 2 nights ago, lights flashing blue and red against the dark storefronts. He had been closing up and had not gone out to investigate, assuming it was just another disturbance. By morning, Marcus was gone. No, Mr. Patel did not know which precinct, did not know if Marcus had been arrested or taken to a hospital or simply moved along. Sarah called the non-emergency police line during her lunch break, navigating through automated menus that seemed designed to discourage actual human contact. When she finally reached a person, they told her they could not give out information about specific individuals without proper identification and relationship verification. Was she family? No. A legal representative? No. Then there was nothing they could tell her. The bureaucratic wall was smooth and impenetrable. She tried hospitals next, calling every emergency room within a 10-mile radius. No Marcus Jennings had been admitted. No John Does matching his description. The shelter wait list she had researched showed nothing. The Veteran Affairs Office was closed for a holiday she had not realized was being observed. Every door she approached remained firmly shut, and behind each one, she felt Marcus slipping further away, becoming just another lost person in a city that produced lost people like a factory churning out defective parts. That evening, Sarah could not concentrate on her design work. The logo she was creating for a boutique hotel looked obscene in its cheerful prosperity. She thought about Marcus sleeping somewhere without his blanket, which had disappeared along with him. She thought about the system that had trained her and everyone else to walk past suffering with barely a glance, to offer $1 and feel virtuous, to never actually see the person beneath the need. She went back to the corner after dark, which her friends would have called foolish. The street was quieter now, shops closed, only the occasional car passing. Sarah sat where Marcus had sat, feeling the cold concrete through her jeans, understanding in a small way what he endured every night. A man walking his dog crossed to the other side of the street when he saw her sitting there. A woman hurried past, clutching her purse tighter. Sarah realized she had become invisible in that spot, transformed from a person into a problem simply by sitting on the ground. A police cruiser slowed as it passed. The officer inside looked at her with suspicion, and Sarah felt a surge of indignation. But she also felt fear, real and primal, understanding that this was how Marcus lived. Subject to the whims and judgment of people with power, always one wrong move away from being swept aside or locked up. She stood and walked home, her privilege like a shield she had never noticed carrying. Sleep would not come that night. Sarah lay in her comfortable bed in her small but safe apartment, and she could not stop thinking about Marcus. Where was he sleeping? Was he safe? Was he even alive? She had walked past him for years before really seeing him, and now that she finally saw him, he was gone. The irony felt cruel, personal, as if the universe was teaching her a lesson about paying attention too late. Morning came with winter's reluctant light. Sarah walked to the corner again, knowing Marcus would not be there but unable to stay away. The empty space accused her, reminded her of all the mornings she had walked past before stopping, all the people she still walked past without stopping. A new person had claimed the spot, a younger man with hollow eyes and a dog on a rope leash. Sarah gave him money, but it felt like betrayal, like she was replacing Marcus, accepting his disappearance. The cat appeared again, and Sarah followed it. The stray cat moved with purpose through the morning streets, and Sarah followed at a distance, feeling slightly ridiculous but unable to turn back. The cat led her away from the commercial district, into neighborhoods where businesses gave way to apartment buildings with cracked facades and chain-link fences. This was a part of the city Sarah drove through but never entered, where the economic divide became visible in every detail from broken streetlights to boarded windows. The cat stopped at an overpass where the highway roared above like a concrete river. Beneath it, Sarah saw what she had somehow never noticed despite driving over this spot countless times. A small community of tents and makeshift shelters clustered in the shadows, a hidden city within the city. The cat trotted toward the encampment, and Sarah hesitated at the invisible boundary between her world and this one. A woman emerged from one of the tents, elderly and bent, with gray hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore layers of clothing despite the relative warmth under the overpass, and she moved with the careful deliberation of someone whose body had become unreliable. The cat wound around her legs, and she bent to stroke it, murmuring words Sarah could not hear. When the woman looked up and saw Sarah standing there, her expression shifted from warmth to guarded neutrality. Sarah approached slowly, hands visible, trying to project harmlessness. She introduced herself, explained about Marcus, asked if anyone here knew him. The woman studied her for a long moment, weighing something Sarah could not see. Then she introduced herself as Dorothy and said yes, She knew Marcus. He came to the encampment sometimes, brought food when he had it, helped with repairs on the shelters. Marcus was one of the good ones, Dorothy said, and there was a story in the way she said it, a history of men who were not good. But Marcus had not been here for a week, maybe more. Dorothy thought he had finally gotten through the wait list for the Veteran Center across town, the place that promised beds and hot meals and help with paperwork. It was hard to keep track of time out here, Dorothy explained. Days blurred together. People came and went. Some got housing. Some got arrested. Some just disappeared into the vast nowhere that swallowed people the city wanted to forget. Sarah asked for the address of the Veteran Center. Dorothy gave it to her but warned her that visiting hours were strict, that they might not let her in if she was not family. Sarah thanked her and turned to leave, but Dorothy called after her. She wanted Sarah to understand something. She said, "People like Sarah came sometimes, well-meaning people who wanted to help one person, their person, the one they had noticed. But helping one person did not fix the system that created this need." Dorothy gestured at the encampment, at the 20 or so people living beneath the overpass. They all had stories. They all had people who might be looking for them or might have given up looking years ago. The words stung because they were true. Sarah had never given a thought to any of this until Marcus disappeared, until her personal connection demanded action. She had walked past this overpass 1,000 times without seeing it, without wondering who lived in the shadows beneath her wheels. The shame felt heavy and appropriate, a weight she should have been carrying all along. The Veteran Center was a low brick building surrounded by a chain-link fence, institutional and unwelcoming despite its stated mission of helping those who had served. Sarah arrived during what the website had listed as visiting hours, but the man at the front desk told her that residents could only receive visitors if they had submitted a list of approved names. Marcus Jennings was not currently a resident, the man said, checking his computer with bureaucratic efficiency. He had been here 3 months ago, but had left after 2 weeks. No, they could not provide information about where he went or why he left. Privacy regulations. Sarah felt the familiar frustration rising. Every path led to a wall. Every question met with regulations and restrictions. She tried to explain that Marcus might be in danger, that he had disappeared, that someone needed to care about what happened to him. The man behind the desk looked at her with tired sympathy. Many people disappeared, he said. The center did its best, but they could not force anyone to stay. If Marcus had chosen to leave, that was his right. If something had happened to him after he left, it would be beyond their scope. Outside, Sarah sat in a car and fought back tears of frustration. How did people survive in a system designed to exhaust them? How did they navigate the bureaucracy when they had no phone, no internet, no permanent address? Each obstacle that Sarah faced with her resources and education would be multiplied 100-fold for someone like Marcus. The system did not want to help. It wanted to look like it was helping while actually protecting itself from the liability and cost of truly caring. Her phone rang. It was her boss, wondering where she was, reminding her about the deadline for the boutique hotel project. Sarah looked at the phone, at the Veteran Center, at the gray sky pressing down like a lid on a pot about to boil over. For 3 years, she had lived in careful balance, doing her work, paying her bills, maintaining the acceptable surface of successful life. But something had cracked open the morning Marcus disappeared, and she could not seal it closed again. She told her boss she was taking a personal day. Sarah spent the afternoon becoming an investigator, though she had no training and no authority beyond her stubborn refusal to let Marcus disappear without a trace. She created a spreadsheet, something her designer brain needed to organize the chaos. Every shelter within 20 miles went on the list. Every soup kitchen, every outreach program, every place that promised help to veterans or the homeless or anyone falling through society's cracks. She started calling, and with each call, she refined her approach. She learned to be vague about her relationship to Marcus, implying connection without claiming kinship. She learned which questions got answers and which got walls. Some places were helpful, staffed by people who genuinely cared. Others were hostile, treating her questions as accusations or threats. One shelter volunteer told her bluntly that they saw hundreds of people each week, that they could barely remember names from yesterday, let alone track someone who might have passed through weeks ago. But at the 7th place she called, a day center that offered showers and mail services, she found someone who remembered Marcus. The woman on the phone, who introduced herself as Sister Margaret, said Marcus had been there about 5 days ago. He had seemed agitated, unlike his usual calm self. He had asked about temporary work programs, about places hiring day laborers. Sister Margaret had given him some information, and he had left heading east toward the industrial district. The industrial district meant warehouses and factories, loading docks and trucking companies. It meant temporary labor offices where men gathered before dawn, hoping to be chosen for a day's work, paid in cash and forgotten by evening. Sarah drove there as the afternoon light began to fade, feeling the neighborhood shift around her from neglected to actively hostile, from broken to breaking. She found 3 labor offices, and at each one, she showed the only photo she had of Marcus, a picture she had secretly taken one morning months ago when he was reading a donated newspaper, his profile caught in early sunlight. The first 2 offices were automated now. She learned. Workers signed up online, got text messages about jobs. No one looked at faces anymore. But the 3rd office was old school, run by a man named Eddie who had been placing workers for 30 years. Eddie squinted at the photo, then nodded slowly. Yeah, he had seen Marcus. Good worker, showed up on time, did not complain. Eddie had sent him on a job 4 days ago, loading trucks at a warehouse that shipped restaurant supplies. It was a 3-day gig, decent pay. Marcus should have come back after it ended, but he had not. Eddie seemed genuinely concerned, which surprised Sarah. He explained that guys who work hard and work clean were valuable. Marcus was one of those guys. If he did not come back, something was wrong. The warehouse was 20 minutes away, a massive concrete structure surrounded by 18-wheelers and forklifts. Sarah felt completely out of place as she walked into the office, asking for the manager, trying to explain why she needed information about a temporary worker from days ago. The manager was a woman named Denise, harried and suspicious, clearly wondering if Sarah was a lawyer or a reporter or some kind of trouble. But when Sarah showed the photo and explained about Marcus being a veteran, something in Denise's expression softened. Her brother had served in Iraq, she said, came back different, struggled for years before finally getting stable. She remembered Marcus because he had worked efficiently and had helped a younger kid who did not know what he was doing. The job had ended on Tuesday evening. Marcus had been paid in cash, $320, and he had left with everyone else. But here was the thing, Denise said, leaning forward. One of the other workers had mentioned seeing Marcus after work, talking to a guy in a black SUV in the parking lot. The worker had not thought much of it at the time, but it had stuck in his memory because Marcus had seemed reluctant, like he did not want to get in the vehicle but felt he had no choice. The SUV had left heading south, toward the old factory district that were being redeveloped. Sarah felt cold despite the warehouse office's stuffy heat. The old factory district was a patchwork of condemned buildings waiting for demolition and luxury loft that cost more than most people earned in a year. It was a place of dramatic transformation and dramatic inequality, where construction cranes towered over streets where the displays still lingered, unable to afford the new world being built on top of their old one. She drove there as darkness fell, knowing she should probably go home, call the police, let someone with actual authority handle this. But the police had not cared when she called before. Marcus was just another homeless person to them, someone who moved around, someone whose disappearance was expected rather than concerning. If she did not look for him, who would? The old factory district felt post-apocalyptic in the twilight, buildings like hollow teeth against the darkening sky. Construction sites sat empty for the night, their machines sleeping behind locked fences. But between the development zones, older structures remained, squatted in by people who had nowhere else to go. Sarah parked under a street light that still worked and sat in her car, suddenly understanding the foolishness of what she was doing. A knock on her window made her jump. A young woman stood there, maybe 20, with a baby strapped to her chest in a worn carrier. Sarah lowered the window carefully, ready to drive away if needed. The woman asked if Sarah was lost. No one came here unless they were lost or looking for trouble. Sarah made a decision, pulled out the photo of Marcus, asked if the woman had seen him. Recognition flickered in the woman's eyes. She had seen him, she said, 2 nights ago, in the big red building down the street, the old textile factory. But Sarah should not go there, the woman warned. Bad people used that building. People went in and sometimes did not come out. The woman shifted the baby. who had started a fuss, and Sarah saw bruises on her wrists, the kind that came from being grabbed hard. Whatever was happening in that red building, this woman knew about it firsthand and was trying to warn a stranger away from it. Sarah thanked her, rolled up her window, and looked at the red building looming 3 blocks away. Sarah sat in her car for 10 minutes, arguing with herself. The smart thing was to call the police, report what she had learned, let trained professionals handle whatever was happening in that red building. But she thought about the bureaucratic walls she had hit all day, the casual dismissals, the way Marcus had already been erased from official concern. If she called now, would anyone come? Would they arrive in time? Would they care enough to actually investigate? She compromised with herself. She would just get close enough to see if there were signs of Marcus, and then she would call for help with actual information to report. She left her car under the streetlight, her phone clutched in her hand with the emergency call screen ready. The walk to the red building felt longer than 3 blocks, each step taking her further from safety into a world she had only seen from car windows. The building's main entrance was chained shut, but a side door hung open, metal twisted where someone had forced it. Sarah stepped inside, letting her eyes adjust to the deeper darkness. The smell hit her first, decay and chemicals and something worse underneath. The factory floor stretched vast and empty, moonlight falling through broken skylights to illuminate scattered debris and graffiti-covered walls. Voices echoed from somewhere above, and Sarah moved toward the sound, finding a stairwell that groaned under her weight. The second floor was divided into offices and storage rooms, doors hanging open on broken hinges. The voices were clearer now, coming from the far end of the corridor. Sarah crept closer, her heart hammering so hard she was sure it would give her away. Through a doorway, she saw them. 8 or 9 people, maybe more, sitting or lying on sleeping bags and blankets. A man with a clipboard was talking to them, his voice too low for Sarah to make out words. But his posture was wrong, aggressive rather than helpful. This was not a shelter. This was something else. Then she saw Marcus. He sat apart from the others, his back against the wall, and even in the dim light, Sarah could see something was wrong. He was too still, his usual alertness replaced by a dull fog. His eyes were open but not seeing, and as Sarah watched, another man approached Marcus with a small paper cup, the kind medications came in. Understanding crashed over Sarah like cold water. This was a pill mill, a trap disguised as help. Take in homeless people, get them hooked on something, anything, then use them for insurance fraud or medical trials or whatever dark economy ran on bodies that no one would miss. Marcus had not disappeared. He had been disappeared. Sarah backed away slowly, her phone already dialing 911 before she reached the stairwell. She spoke in urgent whispers, giving the address, explaining what she was seeing. The dispatcher told her to leave the building immediately, to go back to her car and wait. Police were being dispatched. Sarah should not engage, should not put herself in danger. But as Sarah reached the stairwell, she heard shouting from above. Someone had seen her. Footsteps pounded toward the stairs, and Sarah ran, her designer boots slipping on debris, her breath coming in gasps. She burst out of the side door and sprinted toward her car, fumbling with her keys, sure that any second a hand would grab her from behind. She made it to her car, locked the doors, and saw 2 men emerge from the building, looking around. They saw her car, started walking toward it, and Sarah, shaking hands, finally got the key in the ignition. She drove away too fast, tires squealing, checking her rearview mirror obsessively until she was back in Commercial District where streetlights worked and people walked on sidewalks. She pulled into a convenience store parking lot and waited, her whole body trembling with adrenaline and fear. It took 15 minutes for her phone to ring. The police had arrived at the red building. The dispatcher told her. They had found the people Sarah described and were securing the scene. Sarah would need to come to the station to give a statement. At the police station, Sarah told her story 3 times to 3 different officers. She showed them the photo of Marcus, explained about his disappearance, detailed everything she had learned. The officers were professional but non-committal. They could not tell her much. They said, the situation was under investigation. The people found in the building were being evaluated. Sarah should go home, and someone would contact her if they needed additional information. She went home as dawn was breaking, having been awake for more than 24 hours. Her apartment felt foreign, too clean and safe and separate from the world she had just discovered existed beneath the surface of her comfortable life. She tried to sleep but could not stop seeing Marcus's dulled eyes, the cup of pills, the men who had chased her. 2 days passed with no news. Sarah called the police station repeatedly, left messages that were not returned. She went back to work because she needed the money. But the boutique hotel project felt obscene now, a celebration of luxury built on the backs of people a hotel would never allow through its doors. She moved through her life mechanically, waiting for news that did not come. On the third day, her phone rang from a number she did not recognize. A social worker named Patricia was calling about Marcus Jennings. He had been released from the hospital and was being placed in a transitional housing program. He was recovering, but it would take time. The drugs he had been given had done damage. Patricia could not share details due to privacy rules, but Marcus had asked her to call Sarah to let her know he was alive. More than that, Patricia said Marcus wanted to thank Sarah. Her 911 call had triggered a larger investigation. The operation in the Red Building had been running for months, targeting vulnerable people, using them for fraudulent prescriptions and medical studies. 12 people had been rescued. Arrests were pending. If Sarah had not looked, had not cared enough to search, those people would still be trapped. Sarah asked if she could visit Marcus. Patricia gave her the address of the transitional housing facility and warned her that Marcus was not the same person she had known on that street corner. Recovery would be long. He might not want visitors, but Sarah could try. She brought coffee and a new paperback mystery when she visited. Marcus was thinner, his hand shaking slightly, but his eyes were clear again. They sat in the facility's common room, and Marcus told her what had happened. The man in the black SUV had promised him regular work, a place to stay, a chance to get back on his feet. It had seemed too good to be true because it was. Within a day, Marcus had been drugged and trapped, too foggy to escape, watching others disappear for medical appointments they could not refuse. He had thought he would die there, Marcus said quietly. He had thought this was how his story would end, unnoticed and unmourned. But Sarah had seen him, had refused to let him disappear. She had done what the system would not do. She had cared enough to look. They talked for an hour, and when Sarah left, Marcus stood to shake her hand, just like that first morning in the rain. But this time, he did not let go right away. He held her hand in both of his and said something she would remember forever. He said that most people never really see each other. They look, but they do not see. Sarah had seen him, and in doing so, she had saved not just his life but his faith that people could still surprise you with their goodness. Sarah walked back to her car, and the world looked different now. She saw the woman sitting outside the grocery store with her sign. She saw the man digging through the trash can for returnable bottles. She saw Dorothy's encampment beneath the overpass as she drove past. She could not save everyone. Dorothy had been right about that. But she could see them. She could refuse to let them be invisible. Marcus would get better, the social worker had said. The transitional program would help him find work, reconnect with his daughter, rebuild a life. But 12 other people had been saved too, people whose names Sarah would never know, whose stories would never intersect with Hayes again. They were alive because she had followed a cat, because she had refused to accept that Marcus was just another lost person in a city full of lost people. 3 months later, Sarah walked past Marcus's old corner on her way to work. A different person sat there now with a sign asking for help. Sarah stopped, as she always did now, and gave what she could. She looked the person in the eye and said good morning. It was a small thing, maybe, but small things accumulated into larger truths. Every person deserved to be seen. Every disappearance deserved to be noticed. Every life mattered, whether the system acknowledged it or not. The morning was cold, winter holding on stubbornly, but Sarah felt warm. She had coffee to get, work to do, a life to live. But she moved through that life differently now, awake to the world around her, refusing to look away from the difficult truths that made easy comfort impossible. Marcus had changed her, and in the process, she had helped change his story from tragedy to survival. That, Sarah thought as she walked into the coffee shop, was worth every uncomfortable truth she had learned, every wall she had hit, every moment of fear in that red building. Seeing people, really seeing them, was the most radical act available in a world that preferred its suffering to be invisible. And she would not stop seeing, not now, not ever again.